Welcome to the Dylan Experience. Today is episode 57, and I've got another special guest for you today. But before we get to that, make sure you like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you need to do to stay in touch with the podcast. And let's get to our guest. My next guest is a professional speaker with a story to tell. The core of his message started with the unfortunate loss of two of his brothers, 11 years apart due to suicide. He was speaking, or has been speaking publicly since about 2010 to include his very own TED Talk, Dying Alone. He continues to share his discussions around the world to advocate for suicide prevention and mental health support. My guest today is Dennis Gillian. Dennis, how are you?
Dylan, thank you for having me. And I would love to, I told you I'd love to have a kid named Dylan because it'd be Dylan Gillian. I thought that'd be awesome. But thank you for all that you do. And thank you for bringing me on to talk about, suicide prevention, mental health is where we're heading, go upstream. And thank you for sharing your story and living out loud as you do online and all the stuff you do. Absolutely.
We have remarkably similar messages, I imagine, and so, it just seems like we could probably have quite an interesting discussion at this point in both of our lives and both of our work. So I couldn't see any other way of getting around this. We gotta have a discussion. So Dennis, why don't you start with kind of giving your version of your story? Tell me how you got here. Why are you doing what you're doing now? Give me all the details that you want. You've got all the time in the world.
All right. Everybody put your seatbelt on. It takes me 4 hours to get this out. No, I'm kidding. No, like everybody out there, everyone has a story to tell. Everybody, Dylan, yourself, myself, everyone listening. Unfortunately, my story is one I wouldn't wish on the devil himself. I'm one of 5 kids. When I was a junior in college, I thought everything was great. And that's a time of, I was thinking about it. That's a time of my life where everything was about me. I'm 20 years old. Me. Everything's me. Now I'm 58 and it's about others and this calling I have. But back then it was all about Dennis. And Dennis was having a good time at college. And my junior year, the phone rang. It was October 26th, 1983. It's one of those dates you'll never forget. Where were you then? And my younger sister Janice was on the phone saying, Dennis, you need to come home. Mark died in a car accident. Now that's what they told me. And I was at the time I was studying accounting and I did finish the accounting degree. I'm now a mental health advocate, but this is how this all happened. It started with Mark. And when we lost Mark to suicide, he battled depression for years and he died in a car, but it was no accident. Car never left the driveway. We don't have to talk about means. I don't like to talk about means. All I know is Mark's not walking in the door, right? So I think I'm doing all right. I go back to school. Mark died on a Wednesday. I went home Thursday. I was back at school Tuesday night. And I pretended nothing ever happened. And Dylan, I employed some negative coping skills now looking back at my life. A little drinking, little drugs, little anything to put a Band-Aid on what was a gaping wound. And none of that stuff worked. And we all were trying it. In fact, 11 years later, my brother Matt was trying it. He was in chronic pain. He had been involved in a car accident, broke his femur, had a fusion in his back. And we never talked about Mark. So, there's 5 kids and now Mark's gone. There's 4 of us. It's me, Sheila, Janice, and Matthew, the youngest. And one night, 11 years after we lost Mark, Matthew was drinking. So was I. But he was in Richmond, Virginia, and I was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And in a drunken stupor with access to lethal means, Matt's gone. He followed Mark, and it's awful. One is too many. In the United States, the last data set we have is 45,979. How do I know that? Because I live this stuff. That's the number. And actually, we should be happy with that number because it went down. Mm-hmm. It went down from 47,000. So we're like, yay, happy day. No, happy day is when that number is 0 because 1's too many. Ask anybody. And then we had 2 in the Gillian family, which absolutely wrecked me. So after Matt died, I remember driving from New York to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where I lived 4 hours. I made a smart decision. I'm not known for my smart decisions, Dylan, but this was a smart decision. just ask anybody around me. I made a very smart decision at that point. I said, I'm going to take a break from drinking, because alcohol is a depressant. And some of the folks you coach and some of the folks you talk to deal with this depression, be it, through external means, or the environment, or some trauma informed depression, or a chemical imbalance in your brain that you were born with, depression. It happens. I don't care how you got there, you got there. And what we want to do is get out of there. So alcohol, being a depressant, is not a good thing to take. And I was pretty depressed when Matt died. I was a mess when Matt died. It's something about your little brother. It's different. I was a wreck. So I knew I couldn't put gasoline on that fire. So I decided to take a break from drinking. And I had one of those deals with God moment. You ever have one of those conversations? I had a prayer with God that was not fit for the airwaves because all the language I was using. It was like, I was so mad at the time. And anger, it can be a good emotion, but often not when we get too far carried away. But I was angry, and I made a deal with God at the time. I said, listen, my wife and I were trying to start a family, and we're having a little bit of difficulty. She was working on her thyroid, and they were checking her out. And when they were done checking her out, they're going to turn their attention to me. And I didn't want to go to that office visit as a guy. I was like, let's this fix. So I made a deal with God. I said, here's the deal. I'm so mad at you right now. I don't know what you want, but here's what I want. I said, I want a baby. And if we get pregnant, I'll never drink again. So I'm happy to report that my son is 27, and this summer I'll be 28 years sober. A deal is a deal. We're men of our word. And I made a deal with God. If we got pregnant, we'll never drink again. When we get pregnant, haven't touched the stuff. Yay me, right? My only I guess my regret about that is I didn't do that sooner, because then I could have saw what Matt was going through, because I was drinking with Matthew. I was right there with him. And if I would have put the bottle down, maybe I could have seen what he was going through and had a clearer lens. So that, I wish it was more than 28 years coming up on that July, because I know the last night I got drunk was the night we buried Matthew. I know that date. I know, because I have the mass card in my wallet. I just have to look at that and say, all right, he died on the 16th. We buried him the 22nd. The last night I got drunk was the 21st. I know that date. So I did that. Another smart thing I did, I was still depressed. Taking the alcohol out of the equation, Dylan, was a good move, but I still wasn't improving. And then I went and saw a professional. And it's kind of neat that there were two guys talking on this podcast, because 79% of all completed suicides are dudes. That's raw data, 79%. Let that sit in, everybody. If we round up to 80, which is close because it's like 79.49, I did it this morning for another presentation. If we round it up to 80, Dylan, that's 4 out of 5 suicides are guys. Mm-hmm. Dudes, we suck. There's no other way to put it. What we suck at is asking for help. What we suck at is emoting and telling people I'm not doing so hot. We're the ones that go in the woods and don't come out. We use lethal means, and again, we're not good at it. So 4 to 5 of the completed suicides. Now, women in your audience are not off the hook. They have more attempts, 3 to 4 times more attempts. So the bottom line is we're all in this together. And we're all in this together. It's the battle for our mental health. I'm in this suicide prevention business. Would love to talk myself out of a job and go upstream and talk about mental health. So that's why I share the fact that I'm sober, and I share the fact that I went to see a counselor. Those two things. I don't think I would have shared those years ago, but now as a mental health advocate, man, it's part of my DNA. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's benefited me immensely. It's allowed me to live, it's allowed me to get out of bed. It's allowed me to function as a normal citizen of this great, third rock from the sun. It's helped a lot. I still miss Mark and Matt. There are days the depression comes on, and I just got to do my protective factors and get out of it. If you ever call me up, Dylan, and say, where's Dennis? He's in the woods hiking. I'm having a bad day. I'm going to go have a good day. I'm going to try something to get out of my head. So that's my story. two brothers. I was an accounting business major, and all of a sudden I became a mental health advocate. But it wasn't until years later, and you may have one of these, and a lot of guys have one of these, and even women have one of these. I went in my man cave for years. I couldn't talk about it. Dude, someone, I couldn't even say the word suicide. I would start crying. It was awful. Time does heal. And then you get to a point in your life where you're healing, maybe not as fast as you'd like. You know, I know some people who lost somebody to suicide, and they jump right into the suicide prevention business. It took me 16 years to get off my ass. It took that long. Didn't want to talk about it. And you get to a point in the life when you've been through something, you don't want anyone else to go through it. And I think they call it, I'm not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, I think it's called redemptive healing. You want to help others. So you turn around and you look back on the trail you're on, and you go, anyone behind you, and you go back there and say, hey, grab my rope, I'll pull you. So that's what I'm doing now, I think, with this mission I'm on. I started a foundation to help others called the Half a Sorrow Foundation. And it's based on a Swedish proverb, which I love. I don't know where this was my whole life, but I heard it when I was like 50. A shared joy is a double joy. A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. So when I decided to create this foundation so I could speak to places where normally sometimes they pay me, but if they couldn't pay me, the foundation would cover the expenses. That was the goal. Still is. And we decided to name it not like the Matt and Mark Foundation. Somebody coached me, said, don't name it after your brothers. So we were searching for a name, and we came up with the Half a Sorrow Foundation. Then we want to half our sorrows. And the more you talk about stuff, you know, the smaller it gets. Will it ever disappear? No. No, a half of a half. You're always going to have something, which is fine, which means I miss my brothers. It's fine. You know, I have this sorrow. It happened. If the sorrow goes away, I got to check a pulse. You know, the Grim Reaper standing right behind me saying, dude, it's time. Like, that's not good. But I miss my brothers, and I'm just going to learn how to get through it. I love when people say you need to get over it. That's not going to happen. Never. But we'll get through it. And on this journey I'm on, and I tried to explain this to someone one time. This is, I love brevity. You wouldn't know it right now by all this talking I'm doing, but I was trying to explain to this woman what I was doing in my life. And she goes, hey, so you turned your misery into your mission. I'm like, yeah, that. Forget that 15-minute diatribe I just went on. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to go out there and talk about warning signs, risk factors, talk to anybody who will listen to me, that life is worth living, and suicide is not the answer.
It's just that simple. You know, it's I think you and I probably see this so evidently with how many people we talk to, but I don't think the layperson always sees everything that we see. They don't see all the information that we collect from having conversations with all the people that hear our message and see our message and then come to us and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. And I think that we have access to data that they don't, right? And we have access to not only that, but the experience with that data of being able to see, wow, there's a whole lot of people out there that are feeling lonely, right? There's a whole lot of people out there that are feeling, depressed, or feeling shamed, or feeling guilty, or feeling regretful, and it becomes, I feel like it becomes more than just a mission at times, when it becomes, certainly through my learning of all this, I've become, an influencer, an author, and all sorts of different things just to do what I'm doing now. And what I've found is that at times, if I wasn't careful, it became a burden, right? It became that almost the same thing in reverse, that I had to kind of take a step back and recognize, like, whoa, Dylan, like you're taking this to be a mission that is like far too much, and you're no good to people if you can't learn to do the very same thing that you're teaching people, and so it almost became, if I wasn't careful, and this is something I've recognized about myself, if I wasn't careful, I would fall back into the same habits I had 20 years ago when I was struggling through my father's suicide,
Yeah.
which ultimately led me to nearly my own suicide. And so I've found, that the data that I'm collecting and the people that I'm connecting to, I have to be incredibly mindful of how I approach them and how I approach this whole process of helping people. If it's called redemptive healing, so be it. But I I've had to very much become hyper aware of stepping into that circle and saying, how much of me can I give here? How much of me can I bring to this table without stepping outside of it and saying, I need help for the weight of what I'm dealing with. I think it's, for a lot of other jobs, I think it's a little bit different. For this one, and you tell me if you feel this way too. This one feels different. This one, I've done a lot of jobs before. I've done a lot of different things in my life, but this one, the weight that carries with our message and our work, is hard, right? You tell me about your experience. How do you deal with that? How do you understand that or conceptualize that?
Well, for one, to deal with it, I smoke a lot of crack. No, I'm kidding. I'm sober. We got that already. Sober. No, you're right. Little humor. That's one of the ways I deal with it. Almost a dark humor there. It's rough. It's the classic airplane oxygen mask thing. When the oxygen mask comes down, they say put yours on before you help the others. We got to put ours on, and what we're doing is complex, and what people are going through is complex too. So I think one of the things that helps me out, and this is back to live gigs again, when I'm in a crowd, I get energized. Not energized by the talk, because I know the talk, it's my talk, but I'm energized afterwards by the people that come up to me. And one of the things I do, and I'll show it to you, I got it right here, and you should do this too, Dylan, is I collect some of the feedback that people give me, and I put in a file. And you see how quickly I got it? It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I feel like packing it in, or we lose somebody to suicide and we've been trying like heck not to, I open up that file and I read the little notes from people saying, hey, thanks for coming to my school. One of them said, after hearing you speak, I feel normal again. Because everyone thinks they're on an island by themselves. You go up on stage, you're vulnerable. Like, crap, this happened to me. I didn't want this to happen, but it happened. And how do we prevent future families from going through this? Let's look at risk factors. Let's look at warning signs. That file helps me out so much. In fact, I wrote about it in a magazine called Entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. I run a small foundation. I'm not an entrepreneur. But this was in the bathroom at work. So one day I was reading it, and they had this article called What Inspires Me. And I started thinking about the purple file. So I wrote about it. And there it is in the article, the January issue of Entrepreneur. They ran with my article. And it was really cool because Jimmy Fallon's on the cover of that January issue, and I'm on page 46, way in the back. But when we did this, I got a call from the photographer. Said she was going to coach me how to take the photo for the magazine. I've never been in a national magazine. Here I am. So she goes, here's what I want, chin down, or holding the folder. And she coached me through it. And then she said, Dennis, I'm glad they picked your article. I said, why is that? She goes, I lost my mom to suicide. See, the minute you expose yourself, you'd be amazed how many people come up and say, me too. Me too. Sorry you went through that. So the minute I started talking about my brothers, I ran in. The minute I was vulnerable, Dylan,
Yep.
And you too, like sharing about your father and your own personal vulnerabilities. The minute you do that, wonderful people have flowed into my life. So earlier on, you said, I think you used the word simple. It's somewhat complex for both sides, for us, and for the person going through it. But the minute you break it down and say, it happens every time I speak. I go to leave the building, and the first time it happened to me, it blew me away. I went to leave, and there were people lined up to talk to me, and I was like, me? Like, yeah, I just want to talk to you, and they were lined up. It was bizarro. Like, all right. And I just stuck around. So then I decided, every time I go speak, I have to factor in a couple hours afterwards just to hang out. I thought, I'd just get on my flight and go. No. And that's cool. That's actually where the heavy lifting happens afterwards. People come up, sometimes in a big hall or something, they won't say something, but afterwards they'll say something. And If they write something, into the purple file it goes. Because you know this, Dylan, their days done. I'm done,
Yeah.
done. And when that day occurs, open it up, and there you go. Come on, keep going, keep going. So I recommend fully for you, my friend, as the weight of the world comes down on you, you need a purple file. I know there's people out there you've helped. I know they've given you compliments. Write them
Yeah.
down, print them out. I had one girl on Instagram, it was hilarious. Here's how all my feedback starts. A lot of my programs are mandatory. When I go to colleges, they have to come listen to me speak. It's Greek life or the military where you're in, they have to come. I got a couple challenge coins here. They have to come. It's mandatory.
Yep.
So this one girl starts out, her feedback was hilarious. It said, "Dear Mr. Gillian, I didn't want to come hear you speak." Which I always replied like, "Well, I didn't want to give the talk either, so we're even, right? We are totally cool." And then they'll pick up one snippet. The one that this girl I'm thinking about on Instagram, she goes, I was sitting in the back, probably right by the door, waiting for this thing to be over with, right? Who wants to come to a suicide prevention talk? She goes, I heard you talk about sobriety and blah, 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 blah. She goes, now when I get depressed and I feel my mental health sliding, I go through it sober. And it's made all the difference in the world. I'm like, wow, some kid in the back who didn't want to be there picked up one little pearl from the talk, one little pearl, and it helped her life. Guess what? That's in the purple file. And when I think about quitting, there we go. There we go. One person out of 300. Take it.
Yep.
Take it.
Yeah. I've given plenty of my own discussions, and it's always been in my mind, I'm not speaking to everybody. I'm trying to find that one person that needs it. And, I've never been disappointed with that. People always do the same to me. They come up to me and have those discussions with me afterwards. I've had, I'm a lowly staff sergeant, right? And I've had the honor of having like a first sergeant come up to me and ask me for help. And that, like, to me, a first sergeant's, 2-3 ranks above me. And I never would have expected that, when I first started this journey, because I've been in the military for, over 14 years now.
Nice.
I grew up in a military that didn't have that capacity, right? They didn't have the capacity to look from the top down and say, I need your help because you might know something. It was always, you have to look up and give, you just have to do what you're told, right? We know what's best. And to see how the military is kind of transformed, to see how society, I think, is being transformed as, as culture and social media and, technology is always adapting and growing. I think it's quite remarkable, the direction, but there's still things that are a struggle, I think. And I obviously only know what I see in America, but I'm curious, do you see anything culturally within America that is maybe standing against what you do or what we do? Do you see anything socially, culturally, politically, economically? I don't care what it is, but do you see anything that is, an obstacle or a challenge, or what are you kind of seeing within, the world, the people, the clients, the people you talk to, that is making what we're doing harder?
Sure. The one thing I comment on, and I don't want to brag, that's usually said by someone about to brag. I don't want to brag. Then don't. No, I'm an international speaker. I spoke one time in the country of Panama. So I like to throw that out there, just, for my own ego. But mostly I'm a small time player in a small little world. I live in South Carolina. I cover, most of my gigs are in the Southeast. But on a global or USA, America scale, national scale, there is a polarization going on. The left went further left, the right went further right, and a bunch of us in the middle went, what the heck just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And social media gave everybody a megaphone. So no matter what opinion, I don't care where you are. I really don't. I really, really don't care where you are politically. I don't. I lobby all the time for mental health dollars. That's what I care about. But no matter where you are, you've got this megaphone. and people use it. And man, oh man, 5 minutes on Twitter, my blood pressure's up. Yeah. So
Mhm.
guess what? I'm not going on Twitter for a while. Protective factor. I don't think social media has been kind globally to us because everybody's got the megaphone, and I agree with your right to have it, but I don't need to read it all. And to think about this, Dylan, a lot of times I go on there voluntarily. I click on the Instagram, I click on the Facebook, I click on the TikTok, I click on Twitter, and I go on there and voluntarily expose myself to some of this stuff. Like, wow. So I got to do a better job for Dennis Gillian, just for me, to monitor how much of this I'm taking in. I will go and do all this stuff online and read my news and all that stuff. I don't have to read the comments. I really don't. I don't need that. I just need the news, please. Let me get out of here. So I'm scaling back in some of my stuff. And it stinks because I'm like a professional speaker. I have to be on some of these platforms to put my message out there in a brand. It's tough to be a brand when I'm doing suicide prevention. I found that tough for me.
Yeah.
If I could punt on all that stuff, I would in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I would punt.
It's definitely, it's definitely a challenge. And I think just thinking about, the entrepreneurship side of things of like, if I want to put my book out there, I can't advertise it because it's a book about suicide. And that means that most advertisers won't allow that to be advertised, which is, when you look at that, it's like, well, that makes things a challenge, at least for me. And then also like when you're talking about social media and suicide, that's always an intricate topic, because if you start on social media talking about something else, like this is how the TikTok algorithm works, at least. If you started talking about accounting, and then 3 months later, after making 90 videos, you start talking about suicide, the algorithm will probably more than likely suppress you, because it's taken your accounting information and what you're talking about and discussing in terms of accounting, and suppress suicide, because that's an extreme algorithm change. And so that's one thing that I've noticed throughout like my time on TikTok. Spent considerable amount of time on TikTok. Is that the algorithms themselves within social media context very much suppress the idea of suicide, whether it's good or bad, which is interesting to me.
See, I might be older. I might be too old for TikTok. I heard someone say it one day. She goes, "You're Facebook years old." But somebody said I need to be on there. I'm like, oh, great, another platform. So I recently hired this college intern, and she's going to introduce me to it.
Yeah. Well,
it's a summer experiment. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, good. I did fine without it. I'll do fine without it.
Well, if you think about it this way, TikTok is right now the platform that has the ability to reach people, right? Mm-hmm. Facebook doesn't, because everybody's already there. Instagram doesn't, because everybody's already there. Like all of these other platforms that have been there around, they already have everybody. And so everybody's making content. It's easy to make content on those platforms. But TikTok is different, right? Not everybody's on TikTok because of the reason that you just told me, right? TikTok's weird. TikTok's different. It's another platform, right?
That's another.
There's a lot of people that feel the same way, which is why they won't create content. And so that means whoever's creating content right now can actually use that and gain followers, get people to see. So it's that platform right now, and sooner or later there will be flip-flop, which will take over from TikTok and do the same thing.
Yeah, that'd be another one. There'll be another one coming down the pike. I just want to win the lotteries and get a flip phone. That's all I want to do. If you need me, call me.
Yeah.
But that's the old fart that I am.
TikTok's.
But you asked the question about social media. I mean, from everyone being polarized, I think that the polarization mechanism is social media.
I would almost challenge you on that. I would say it started long before social media. I think it started with because social media really took hold around 2007, 2008. I would say media itself, news media, started that polarization. And I think social media just, the algorithm just followed on the bandwagon of human nature.
Fair enough. You're fair enough. If you own the cameras and you own the studio, you own the opinion. You're right.
Which to me, I look at this and I say, social media does have that negative aspect. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. But what social media gives people the ability to do is share in a way that you have the camera, you have the microphone. And that this is the interesting thing about TikTok. And I think TikTok's the most real platform we've seen since forever, right? I think this is the place where people have actually taken a hold and said, I'm going to be the real version of me here, or as much as
Good.
possible. And what that's shown is that things like sexual assault, harassment, um, rape, suicide, domestic violence, all of these, like trauma, all of these things, mental health, all of these things are becoming major topics on a platform, a new platform that has never really been able to take hold on other platforms.
Well, yeah, there's pros and cons. I know I'm just an old man with my opinion, but I do think there are people who went on before me on the TED Talk talking about social media and how it helped her.
Mhm.
So I get that too. I always think about however you connect with people. The two things that drive what I do is hope and social connection. And if you derive a social connection from social media, good for you.
Yeah.
If it keeps you on this planet, I'm all for it. Yeah, I'm just an old curmudgeon. That's all. Hey, kids, get off my lawn. No, if it works for you, it works for you. And that is the beauty of being a mental health advocate too, by the way. As long as it's a positive thing, I should be an old fart, yelling at the TV, and I don't watch much TV at all. Um, but I've come to the realization, wherever you are in this world, whatever works for you to keep in the right frame of mind works for you, and I'm all for it.
Yep.
So I'm like, all right, that works. You found a community there. The kids who do gaming and they get on Twitch and they all bundle up. Good for you.
Right.
Good, 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 good. Because a stick alone can be broken by a child. A stick in a bundle cannot be broken. That's an old Aesop's fable thing. A
Yep.
stick alone. Our brothers were alone when they broke,
Right.
when they died. But a stick in a bundle, wherever you find your bundle,
Yep.
good. Stay bundled up. So I get you, bro. I could be easily swayed.
I think social media has such an interesting situation. I think right now it's it's both good and bad, right? I think everything's both good and bad. And you're absolutely right that social connection is so fundamental for anyone. What's always interesting to me is like the people I work with, more often than not, it's much easier for them to find people on social media than it is to look at their family and say, hey, I have an issue, right? And so this family structure, this American family structure that I often see, whether it's parenting styles, and it's not just American. I know it's so many different, there's so many different nationalities that struggle with parenting styles to keep children connected to their parents. But it really seems like the last 10 years, and even now, we're really struggling for children to maintain relationships with parents. And you're obviously older than I am. How do you kind of look at that process with your children? Like, how do you maintain connection with your children versus like having communication, right? Because I know from my work, communication's a struggle from generation to generation, right? Baby boomers and Gen X look at millennials like we're the problem, or they look at Gen Z like we're the problem, and we're looking, millennials are looking at Gen X and baby boomers, and there's always this conflicting, and convergence of ideas and thoughts. And you guys are acting like socialists and you guys are acting like fascists, and it's always name calling and stuff. But ultimately, in your life, in your experience, in your work, how do you work within that realm and have that connective tissue within the family kind of maintained?
Well, I have two boys, and they're awesome, and we do communicate quite often, and they're out of the house, and they're doing their thing. One just got married, and he's doing his thing. In fact, he's in Hawaii as we tape this on his honeymoon. And the other guy, we could do a better job communicating. We text a lot, which is a form of communication, so I'll take it. I think the struggle you identified there between the generations, it's funny. I think that's been going on for like ever. When Elvis
Yeah.
Presley came out, that darn rock and roll, these kids, and the Beatles came out and they grew their hair long. Oh, we're screwed. Every time I go to speak at a college or school, I come home with such a refreshing outlook for the future. Like the kids are going to be okay. They're being kids.
Yeah.
They're being exactly what I was, the dork that I was at that age. They're doing everything, uh, with the exception of the increased screen time. But that wasn't a factor when I was growing up, and I'm thankful, I'm grateful it wasn't, because we had to go outside and find people. We had to go
Mhm.
outside and play. I do worry about that. So we'll go back to that real quick. Is everything in moderation, everything, including your screen time. And I think the kids are going to be all right. Every time I go to these colleges, and they sometimes do a pre-program or a post-program, and we'll sit around and talk. They're doing okay. They have a lot on their plates. COVID was not kind to anybody, but I think the students got it right on the chin. I've talked to a junior at one college, and she said, my freshman year was great. Freshman first semester was great. We went on spring break, and it hasn't been normal since.
Right.
She's a junior. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's been a rough 2 years. So uh, they're going to be okay. But there's always been the intergenerational rub. And as a baby boomer, I love when people go, thanks, boomer. I know we did. I'm going to take it one for the team here. We did leave the place, uh, and we're going to leave the place less orderly than we found it, with your debt and all that stuff. We're not leaving, and all the planet screwed. We're not good stewards. I'm going to take one for the boomers. We could have done a better job, but in the end, I still have a bright outlook, and all it takes for me to get that outlook is to go out and see these kids and to go out and talk to them, and I just feel better when I'm around them. I spoke at a church on Sunday, and then I went and spoke to a Christian school the next day. And it doesn't matter if it's Christian or not; they're just kids. They're like, I think I had 7th through 12th graders, and they cracked me up. They were awesome, especially the kids in the front row. They were having a good time, but it was good. And every time I walk out of the building, like, we're going to be all right. We're going to be okay.
Yeah. I
They may
think
not have any social security, but they're going to be all right.
I I think what's great about this is that there's recognition on in two directions from you, right? Of you're willing to look at yourself and say, my generation could have done a better job. And you're also willing to look at my generation and generations beyond me and say, you guys are working hard and trying to figure this out just like we were when, we were going through your own, adversities. And I think that's certainly more people could use that, that freshness of perspective, of the ability to look at it from both directions. I think oftentimes we get locked in this, you know, this visceral feeling of like, you guys did this to us. And I certainly my generation does the same thing of, we look back and we're like, you guys taught us to do this, right? And we tend to then blame. But I love that you have the ability to do both, of recognizing your own place and how people are also adapting and improvising and surviving in some regards. And I think that's incredibly important. I think that's incredibly a powerful place to be. And I think it really comes from what you do, because your ability to have conversations with people that have differing perspectives than you is remarkably important for that perspective to take place. I think that's needed. I think if there's any lesson we learn from what you and I do, that's profound, because when we really have these discussions around mental health, you realize that, when parents are teaching their children, they're very much learning how to live life themselves, and I think, when you look back on your parents, because that's such a heavy topic today, in many regards. It's really hard to give any empathy to parents that were abusive or destructive or self-destructive even. And it's rare to step out of that and say, I can forgive you. That doesn't mean I'm gonna forget everything you've done, but I am going to forgive you because I don't need to hold that negativity within myself. I think that requires a lot of perspective.
Some parents will give you an example of what not to do. You
Absolutely.
know, I'm Irish Catholic, and alcohol's part of our culture, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
I decided to not drink. It's it stops with me. And for all your listeners, all the intergenerational stuff we talked about, Dylan, life is hard no matter what generation you're in. It
Yeah.
just is.
Yep.
It's brutal. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. I don't care. Boomer, millennial, Gen X, whatever you are now, Gen Z. It's hard. So let's operate from that. Life is hard.
Right.
And there was a song that came on the other day, and it said something about joy in the chaos. And for some reason in my head, it popped in this bumper sticker, and I ordered some this morning. I made them up. It's called "Enjoy the Chaos," because life is chaotic. It just is. Show me someone who's got a normal life.
Right. What's
You heard it.
normal at this point, right?
Yeah, what's normal? It's not normal. So it's chaotic. All right. Everybody listening, is your life chaotic? Yeah, it's a little chaotic. Let's enjoy it. Because in
Yeah.
the bottom line is here, we got about 80 years on this planet, 8 decades. What's the average? 76.1, whatever it is, the average lifespan. Some above, some below. That's short, especially when you're my age. You're looking down. I'm on the downhill slide. It's short. So enjoy the chaos. That's my new motto. And what I'm doing with all these mottos and stuff, I'm trying to trick my brain. My brain's bad to me. My brain is my worst critic, right? If I screw up, Dylan, you screw up. No one's harder on Dylan than Dylan,
Yeah.
right? No one's harder on Dennis than Dennis. So what I'm trying to do is retrain this and all right, come on, Dennis, come on, you got this. I'm trying to treat myself like the old adage, treat yourself like a child. If I screw up, I'm brutal on myself. But if my son screws up, I try to coach him up a little bit as a parent. Go ahead, not your finest moment. We can do better, give him that kind of talk. But boy, oh boy, if I did the same thing, it would be like, you idiot, you suck, talking to me. So I'm starting to do this whole thing. And this is my new thing. My new kick I'm on, Dylan, treat myself like a child.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to myself now like I would talk to one of my sons.
Yeah.
Internally.
I know that, I started, back in like 2013 for me, I tore my ACL. And that's the first time I've ever like heard anything about neuro-linguistic processing. I just still remember this to this day. I walked into this little classroom in Fort Knox, like tiny. I think you could probably fit 12 people in desks in there. And we fit like 15 to 20. So it was super cramped. And I just remember this huge black dude. I don't remember his name. I don't remember like anything about him. I just remember this big black dude walks in and I'm just like, holy cow. I'm sitting there with a big knee brace on because I'm recovering at Fort Knox at the time. And this guy just starts talking about self-talk. And it was just like the conversation that I did not expect, of talking about, how to really be positive and how to create, like an affirmation that's productive for you and diving into the science of self-talk and how this actually applies to you, right? Not just giving me the bullshit speech, like really sitting with us and walking us through this. And I just like from that moment forward, that was when I started really paying attention to the words that I speak, and just like you're talking about speaking to yourself like a child, like that guy really taught me how to pay attention, right? It was just that self-awareness for the first time of like, man, these words matter, right? Not just the words I'm speaking, the words I'm thinking matter almost more than the words I'm speaking. And if I don't pay attention to these, they're going to hurt me. But I didn't recognize that part until 3 years later when I was, in my darkest place. But that's where it started. And I still remember that, guy. I wish I could even find out who that was, but it was such a moment of like an epiphany for me of self-awareness. And I didn't recollect how important it was until about 2015, when things kind of started all falling into place where I'm here now, right? I came to this point of like really giving value to words, and how important they are. Not only that, but then crafting those words into a narrative and a story, and the ability to expose that story not only to other people but myself. How do I share it? How do I speak it? How do I look at it from a positive standpoint? Do I share it from a positive standpoint, or do I share it in a place where it undermines me and undercuts my ability to appreciate myself? I try to do the best I can. I know sometimes I can be sarcastic and a bit sassy with my stories, but at the same time, I always try and think for myself and understand, you know what? I need to be more appreciative of how I actually worked through this and how I overcame this, and give myself a little bit of forgiveness and the fact that I just didn't fucking know, you know?
Oh yeah. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. That's why I always say to myself, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time.
Yep.
Looking back, I would totally do it differently. And when you were talking about that, the voice inside our head, I forgot where I read it. There's a study that says, all right, if I think in my head, Dennis, you're an idiot, Dennis, you're an idiot, it's like 10 times worse if I say it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Neurolinguistic, if I say, Dennis, you're an idiot, it's worse.
Yep.
So don't say it out loud. If your listeners are out there right now, just say, listen, maybe you can't turn off that voice, but don't verbalize it.
Yeah.
Don't say it out loud. We'll take baby steps, and then we'll work on changing it. Dennis, not your finest moment. You can do better. It's just as good as Dennis, you're an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Trevor Mawad. I think he died either last year or the year before from cancer. But he wrote a book called It Takes What It Takes. And he was talking about negative thoughts, right? Not even negative speech, but negative thoughts are 7 times more powerful than positive ones. So obviously you can kind of do the math of, you're going to have to do a lot more positive to undermine the foundation of a negative thought pattern. And so what he kind of purports is, you can't just put a car from reverse to drive, right? You have to go to neutral. So if there's anything you do, don't go for positive. Just don't do the negative. Don't share the negative, right? Don't focus on the negative. When you recognize it, you say, I don't have to make this a bad thing, right? And I don't have to make it a good thing. I just don't have to create, a pattern of sorts to make this the worst thing in the world or anything like that. It's certainly still a challenge, but it's important to recognize that we can't just go from reverse to drive. We have to find a neutral point where we can create that foundation of, this is neither, for me, this is neither good nor bad, right? Maybe it's both, right? Or maybe it's just neutral. Maybe it's just nothing. Maybe it's something, but I don't have to determine right now. And I'm probably not very good at it, of determining what the value of it is right now. Because if I look at it right now, it's probably a bad thing. But if I look at it 12 years from now, it might be the best thing ever. I like to think
That's
long
awesome.
term.
Find the neutral. I was taking notes while you're writing that. I was writing that down for me. An issue of self-preservation. I have fake arguments in my head with people. I'm like, they're not even happening.
Yeah.
I'm making these scenarios up, and I get home and it's like 180 degrees what I thought it was. Like, oh, forget it.
Yep.
But I had that whole scenario in head. I was building up my defenses, and nothing happened. And
Yep.
I went negative big time. So I got to get to neutral. That's what I wrote down. Get to neutral.
Yeah. He's, Trevor Mawad was one of those people that when I first read his book, I was just it was profound, and it's a beautifully written book. His father was a motivational speaker. He became I think a performance coach, and even coached Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think he told anybody about his cancer before he died. And so he died quite suddenly, as for his fans at least. But he was one of those people that, he was big, but he was someone that at his, at his level of fame was still willing to share his thoughts with people and respond to people. He responded to a couple of my comments and messages on his
Wow.
Instagram, which was, for me, it's really cool. Um, and I just, I feel for him. He was I think he was a great human being. Had a lot of good things to say, and I always recommend his book.
Well, I wrote it down too.
Yeah.
I got some I come on a podcast. I got a homework assignment. Dang it.
I like to make things interesting in my podcast, and I think
Sure.
the Dylan experience is not just an experience for the audience. I think it's also experience for guests. Of
Thank you.
course,
Thanks for making that happen.
absolutely. So Dennis, what are you working on now? Where are you going now? I know we had talked about, the Camel Hat Club before we started this. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me where you're going from this point on.
Oh, sure. I'm doing a lot of work with the foundation and we're working on programming. And one of the programs we just recently came up with, and for the listeners out there who are listening and cannot see us, we're doing a Zoom call right now, but Dylan's wearing a camouflage hat at the moment, as he always does.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you've seen him, you know the hat. And I commented on it because I'm starting a thing now. It's called the Camo Hat Club. And it's for men because men, as we talked about, represent a high percentage of the suicides, and we tend to camouflage our emotions. So a bunch of guys, this is where it started. I went through a divorce and I moved an hour and a half away. I might as well move to China because an hour and a half away, all my support systems were gone. But I started in a new town in Greenville, South Carolina. And I met a couple of guys in my building that are about my age. And we decided one day, let's go out to breakfast. Let's get off. I was working out of my apartment. It's small and I work from home. I'm like, oh, I got to get out. These walls are closing in on me. I was dark after the divorce and my apartment was dark. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I was self-aware of knowing that I needed to change my environment. So I ran into these guys downstairs. Let's go get breakfast. We started this thing up. We go to breakfast. We now go the first Thursday of the month. It still goes on. And we even survived COVID. We would go during COVID because I live in South Carolina and we pretended COVID never happened.
Yeah, I could see that.
COVID did not know South Carolina's borders. It couldn't come in here. It didn't know where we were. So we kept it going, and we just met this week. And what we started doing is I said, guys, start bringing camouflage hats because we're going to call it the Camo Hat Club. And I want this thing to go out. So all your listeners, it just takes a spark to start a forest fire. I need some guys to start doing this and then send me the photos. Because one, I have to prove that the trademark is being used. So Camo Hat Club is out there. And two, the real benefit is to those guys you get together with. Now, we all have people, literally neighbors that we haven't seen in a while because, life's too busy. So these guys, no matter what we do, the first Thursday, and it's not that complex. I'm not creating a program for guys, we need officers. It's a 3-year commitment. No, we send out a text the Wednesday before and say, hey, who's coming to breakfast tomorrow?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
Same place, same time, same month. And we go. And we just check on each other. And especially at my age, as you get older, you tend to lose friends. And you're going to see, Dylan, as you grow and your family grows, you'll know people from your kids group. You'll know, but who's your group?
Right.
Who's your people? So we did that. I started a Bible study years ago with friends of mine. I'm trying to keep this out of that realm. This is just a touch point. If you believe in God, you should be doing a Bible study on your own. That's my thought. This is different. This is just a touch point. Because remember, when I'm dealing with people that are in desperation or hopeless, they might be mad at God. I was at one time. I get it. So it's just a touch point. There's no agenda.
Yeah.
There's no social, there's no social committee. We're doing this. We're going to go pick up litter by the highway. No, we're just going to have breakfast. What I will ask of the group, if you do Camel Hat Club, this is the one caveat I will ask. You will go around the table and say, guys, how's your mental health? That's all. It's a touch point. And I remember one time where I was in a group and I don't know, this guy showed up out of nowhere. I'm like, where's this guy doing in my group? And he had gone through a divorce and I was going through a divorce. I'm like, well, now I know why he's here. He's here to help me. I had questions for him. You know, I had a lot of questions for him. So everyone gets put in your path for a reason, but I will ask the group to do that. If we're going to kick this thing off, you have to ask one question, everybody, how's your mental health? And you know what guys are going to say? We're such dorks. We go,
I'm
fine.
fine.
Good. No, but every now and then someone will go, you know what? Like I did, you know what? I'm going through a divorce. I'm not doing so hot. And then someone goes, well, I went through, what's going on? You know, and someone will relate to you.
Yep.
I hope you'll get to a point where you're comfortable with your group and say, you know what? I got some shit going on and I don't know what to do. What would you guys do if you're me?
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. The Camo Hat Club. And then we're doing other stuff like the Purple File. That's another program. I'm going to roll that out because it's benefited me and I want it to benefit others. And man, the minute I told that story to one person, he goes, well, I'm getting one, you know, so people will do it. And Dylan, I expect you to have one, by the way, because you're helping people all the time.
You know, I have a folder. It's not purple because it's on the, you know, it's on the computer webs. However you want to look at that.
It's in the cloud.
I'll have to look and see if I can make it purple.
Do that for me. Or just call it the Purple File. You'll know, you put it on your desktop, the Purple File. No one will know what it is or what's in there. Just trust me, it's my stuff.
I think both of those are fantastic ideas. I already love the when you told me about the Purple File, I loved it. I already kind of do it. I don't do it with probably the vigor or the, you know, the emphasis that you probably do, but I probably should, you know, in many regards I probably should. I love the Camel Hat Club. I think that's a phenomenal idea, and it gives me so many ideas of like, just, you know, one thing that I've struggled with is kind of cutting out time, especially with COVID, because I started my whole business and my whole structure and infrastructure of what I'm doing now during COVID. I literally started my business March 3rd, 2020, and 10 days later, lockdown, right? And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do now? Right? Like
pivot.
And so, you know, I've really been wanting to, like, one, do book signings. I've wanted to do kind of just get-togethers of like, you know what, hey, even if it's in my hometown, I should probably do it more. But you know, hey, I'm having a lunch or a dinner or a breakfast or something like that of, you know, you come join me, right? I'll be here for free. You know, you can buy your own food, but other than that,
we buy our own food.
You know, I think that's just something to bring the community together and bring people together that obviously find me safe, which I think is what ultimately your goal is of making the Camo Hat Club, is eventually the people that come start to realize that this is a safe place. You know, like, hey, I've got something dark and deep to share. I know you guys have talked about it before, but I've never felt like I could. And so now I am. Now I'm feeling like I can, because, you know, you guys have earned my trust. I've watched you guys talk about this stuff for a long time. And I think that's like a form of interdependence that every community needs, right?
We need it.
Every society needs, right? Because, you know, whether you're young or old, like, you need people that are courageous enough or willing enough to talk about topics like we talk about, and to step out of line of, you know, the suffer in silence and the I'm fine and I'm good, and say, you know what, I'm not good, and I could really use some advice. I can use some help. I could use some guidance here. How did you guys do it?
Yeah, and that's, you're right. Over time, it comes through. And some of these guys actually, you know, I didn't know them that well, but when I moved apartments, they came to help me move. I mean, stuff like that. Like, dang, I don't know. I'm sitting there going, how am I going to get this couch out that door? And here comes two guys from the Breakfast Club going, hey, we're here. We got an hour. Good. Let's take this couch out. You know, stuff like that. So that's been a real big thing. And also, I got a little children's book coming out. I can't write a cool book like you. I gotta start small. I gotta do a children's book. See Dick run. You know, it's based on a true story that this kid told me at the University of Delaware. When I spoke at some schools, I bring kids up to speak with me. Like, I'll say, hey, listen, you get tired of hearing me speak. Let's bring one of you up. and we vet them beforehand. We do a lot of practice, and they come up, they tell their story, and this kid told the story. I'm like, wow. So literally, Dylan, 4 years later, I called him up, said, I can't let that story go. And I'm thinking about a children's book, and I can't do it without you because it's your story. Are you in? And he said, oh yeah. Because I told him I'll pay for it. He's still in college. Like, yeah, I'll pay for it. Okay, I'm in. So we have a children's book coming out, how a compliment, a well-placed compliment changed his life. A well-timed good word
That's
set him
awesome.
on a path instead of suicide. He went home with a happy feeling when he was in middle school. And he told that story, and I was on stage. I'm sitting there going, how the hell do I follow that guy? It
A, a,
was
chi-
awesome. So that's coming out.
a child with a story, a good story is pretty
Yeah,
powerful.
it is. And and the audience ate it up. And it's true though. Like, he's having a bad day, and one kid said something nice to him. That's back to your, your negative thoughts for positive. The ratio that's off. A lot of negative, but it was that one positive that happened to him.
Yeah.
That he left the building on a positive note, and he did not die by suicide because he's here today.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is, I imagine you have said a lot of positive things to a lot of people in your life, and I hope you remind yourself daily, just outside of the purple file, of just how much you do good for people.
Well, thank you for that. I do need to hear that, believe it or not, because I do, like everyone else, I crush myself some days. Like, I can do better. There's more I can do. I got a whiteboard over there full of stuff. I'm not even halfway through with it. Like,
I know.
One person, So thank you, because again, harsh critics.
Yep.
Dennis Gillian is a harsh critic on Dennis Gillian. So
Yep.
thank you, Dylan. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, Dennis, I think we should wrap this up with one more question. I think it's coming. I hope you've prepared yourself, because it's an important question. If there was one message you could leave the world, Dennis, what would it be?
It's going to be short and it's going to be sweet. It's going to be, life is worth living. That's it. But it may not feel like it now. But I don't want you to throw out your best ally. Your best ally is time. When Matt died, I didn't feel very well. I was doing awful. Fast forward to today, I'm doing okay. Life is good. So life is worth living. And when I speak to the younger folks, sometimes their suicides are impulsive because their pediatric brain is not fully formed, somewhere about mid-20s, right? So they're impulsive. Girlfriend broke up with me. I didn't make the football team. I'm out. As you get older, it's layers, financial, relationship, job, blah, 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 and just how much can a person take with all that going on. I'm going to come back to that one message. Still, with all that going on, life is worth living. And I remember one day I pulled over on the side of the road, and I'm just standing there, and someone came out, "You're right." I said, "I'm fine. I'm just watching the sunset." Because I drove by this road all the time, and there was a lake and the sun was going down. Like, how many times I drive by there? Oh, that's nice. I just pulled over. Like, let me just enjoy this. And I think that appreciation comes from suffering. I suffered a lot in my life with the loss of my brothers. And so have your listeners, so have you, Dylan. And when you suffer a lot, you appreciate the good shit. So here comes the sunset. I pull my car, like, I'm going to sit in this guardrail. I'm watching that damn thing. It's going to take me all of 15 minutes. It goes behind. I'm like, all right, get back in the car. No worse for the wear. I'm late for dinner, but I got to see something really cool. So life is worth living, and it's in the valleys that you grow. And and we need those valleys, believe it or not, because they make us appreciate the mountaintops. If everything were mountaintops, it'd be a plateau, and we wouldn't know the difference. So a long answer with a short line, that life is worth living. But I think you know where I'm going with that.
Yep. Beautifully put, Dennis, and I greatly appreciate it. What is the best place to get in touch with you? And yeah, go for it.
Since I'm old, send a carrier pigeon. No, with a note. No, here's the deal. I'm in between websites. I have two really cool websites. The first one is my name, DennisGillian.com, DennisGillan.com. I like that website, but I'm moving to the foundation website, which is halfasorrow.org, because I feel like this mission is bigger than me. When I first started out speaking, Like, what's your website? DennisGillian.com. Hey, think much of yourself, buddy? I do. It is. I love that website. It got me a lot of business, but I think now I'm moving towards this, and hopefully there's a legacy here. I can hire people, and someday this Half a Sorrow Foundation will live on.
Yeah.
I like DennisGillian.com, and I still do gigs under that. I love that website. I have safety plans on there. That's a good website. But either one of those will work. DennisGillian.com or halfasorrow.org.
And we'll have both of those in the show notes so people can click those, go right to them.
By the way, what's your website's name?
Mine's DylanSessler.com.
You're just as creative as I was.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It works now, right?
It's what I've got for myself, right? It's me. It's the
It
easiest
works.
way, right?
I was laughing because I'm looking at it right now. That was a softball question. It's awesome. I love DennisGillian.com. No one else has it.
Yep, absolutely. You know, if you're gonna look me up, you know how to find me. You know, but Dennis, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts and your words. And I greatly appreciate them. And for anyone still listening, please go check out his websites. Go check out his work. Go check out his TED Talk. I think it was great. And we'll catch you next time on the Dylan Experience.
Thank you, Dylan, for having me. I appreciate it.